Welcome back to the Changemaker podcast. I'm your host, Deke Copenhaver. Today, our guests of mine are two new friends of mine with Ventures ATL out of Atlanta. The first is Jacob Blaeser, who is the president. Jacob was the founding managing director of Ventures ATL. Starting September 2020, Jacob transitioned to a position on the board as he enrolled in Stanford's Graduate School of Business. Jacob graduated from the Georgia Institute of Technology. I won't hold that against you, I'm a Georgia guy. With highest honors in the field of industrial and systems engineering. During his time at Georgia Tech, he assumed a leadership role in a wide range of extracurricular activities, including the role of Chief Justice of the Undergraduate Judiciary Committee. He also helped lay the foundation for a program at Georgia Tech that allows students with developmental differences to work towards a certificate of completion. Prior to joining Ventures ATL, Jacob worked as a management consultant firm focusing on strategy, sourcing, and procurement, process transformation. He combines a disciplined technical background with a passion to promote sustainable employment opportunities for adults with autism and developmental differences. And Chet Hurwitz is the executive director. Chet is actively engaged on a daily basis to help Ventures ATL achieve its mission to provide career path opportunities for neurodiverse adults. In his role, he relies on more than 40 years of experience as a lawyer and strategic business advisor to several global companies. For the last decade, he has been an active and visible leader on national initiatives to create meaningful career paths for individuals with autism and other developmental differences. Chet plays a lead role in the development of the commercial relationships with our corporate clients and the manner in which Ventures ATL delivers successful client engagements. Chet has lived in Atlanta for more than 30 years, and he has an adult son on the autism spectrum. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jacob and Chet.
Welcome to the Changemaker podcast, hosted by Deke Copenhaver. Deke is the author of The Changemaker, a Forbes publishing book that has reached #1 on Amazon on multiple occasions and in multiple categories like management skills and total quality management. During this podcast, Deke interviews exceptional change-making leaders. Deke currently operates Copenhaver Consulting, where he helps local governments and other public organizations maximize their potential. He's also a sought-after public speaker. We hope that the Changemaker has an impact on you today and that you find takeaways that make you a better leader in your life. Now, here's Deke.
Guys, thank you so much for being here today. Our mutual friend Monty Hamilton connected us a while back, but I'm fascinated by the success that you're having there in Atlanta. So tell our listeners and our viewers just a little bit about how you got started with Ventures ATL and what you do, the service that you provide, which is incredible.
Well, I'll start with how we got started. So as a parent of an adult son on the autism spectrum, I've been aware for a long time of the significant challenge that this segment of the population has in finding suitable employment opportunities. It's widely reported that there's an 80% unemployment or underemployment rate for this population. And I was determined to do something about it. So after spending time helping to launch a nonprofit in another part of the country with a similar mission, in 2017, we decided to launch Ventures ATL with the purpose of utilizing the special strengths and abilities of neurodiverse employees to create meaningful employment opportunities and to basically create a thriving business. So that was sort of the origin and the mission behind Ventures ATL. And maybe when we think about how we've succeeded in what we've done, I might turn it to Jacob to give a little overview of how we started, somewhat modestly, and then maybe it'll segue into where we are today.
Sure.
That would be great.
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief and a summary. I'm sure we'll double click into some more detail as the conversation progresses. But when we look at our population as a whole, this neurodiverse population, adults on the autism spectrum, et cetera, what we found is that they possess a wide variety of valued skills in the marketplace. However, they've traditionally faced friction points that have prevented them, better said, of finding or holding jobs, at least on a long-term scale. And so the design of Ventures ATL is largely such that we can accentuate the things that our employees excel in while we take away the things that they have traditionally had friction points with. And a lot of that comes down to our management team and how we communicate to our employees, how we communicate directions or goals, how we incorporate feedback from various clients into the work we do day to day, and also how we scope projects. Because a lot of people come to us and well-intentioned want to give us opportunities for certain types of work, but if we realize that it's not going to be a good fit for our employees and their skill sets, we try to steer towards things that will set them up for success.
Well, and you and I, the three of us discussed last time we were on a call that really, it's, an 80% unemployment rate for people that want to work. That's just incredible. What an untapped resource. But two, one of the things I think, and we discussed this last time we spoke, is that it's great. You see grocery stores might bring somebody on the spectrum in as a bagger or something, but and as you guys have discovered, there's so much more that they can do with it. And I think part of this is giving meaningful work and dignity to people that really want to contribute to the world around them that they live in.
Absolutely. One of the things we often ask our employees is what's their favorite part about their week, their day, their work in general. And we get a variety of responses. And one of the most overwhelmingly consistent ones is that it matters so much to them that the work they're doing makes a meaningful difference to our clients. In other words, they come in each day and they know that the work they're doing isn't just busy work, it's not just make work, but it's having a literal impact on the clients that we serve. And so it just goes to show that they can tell that their work is meaningful and valued, and they do have skills that matter. Just so far, there hasn't been a successful avenue for them to apply those skills. And so a large part of what we're trying to do at Ventures ATL is to show that, hey, this is a talented, but thus far underutilized and overlooked resource pool that can make a difference. And there's millions of them across the country that can do so.
One of the things that's interesting, if I could just follow up on that, is that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with somebody holding a job at a grocery store, doing that job really well. However, we found that for many people on the autism spectrum, that may not be a particularly good fit. And so one of our ideas or our key concepts was, let's operate businesses that really play to their interests and strengths. And in some ways, we might say the real silver bullet or grand slam home run for us is if we could find areas of commercial demand that involve skills or traits that make our employees above average. Not just that they could do it well enough, but maybe some of the most common traits in this population would make them stronger than average. And I think we've, to a large degree, achieved that.
And so often people like to paint with a broad brush, and they like to compartmentalize people. And I'm like, and I think you and I, we had all discussed it. I read a great book recently called Living Fearless by a guy named Jamie Winship that talks about living into your true identity. So, your identity is not your bank account. It's not your job title. It's not, your last name or the club you're a member of. It's what are the specific gifts God has given you that are your gift to the world. And I'm like, it's the same thing with people and with autism, that they've all got unique gifts, but you guys can better explore what are those unique gifts and help these folks live into their true identity, which I think is awesome. That's just you guys are doing great work.
Well, thanks. It's easy for us to be inspired working with our employees and the rest of our management team.
So how many employees do you have now?
Yeah, we have 25 at the moment, 22 of which are on the autism spectrum, and then 3 on a management team.
So do you have projections on where you like to get as far as employment goes, or do you want to keep it as a smaller number?
So we don't want to keep it as a smaller number. A couple of things I'd say about this. As I think this population is growing pretty rapidly in percentage terms. For any combination of reasons, the answer is beyond my pay grade, but we know that 30 years ago, it was projected that maybe 1 out of 150 or 200 children would have autism. Now they say it's 1 out of 31. So we have, a rapidly growing segment of the workforce. And we know in the state of Georgia, it's estimated there are over 200,000 individuals on the autism spectrum. And if we assume, even if we just take a metro Atlanta perspective, not to be too parochial in that respect. But, if about half the population of the state is in metro Atlanta, we have a large population for whom the jobs we want to create would be an excellent fit. So our goal is to grow. We've tried to establish a really solid foundation operationally and credibility with clients that I think Jacob and I will talk about some more. And we think we've done that. And now I think 2 years from now, we could be twice the size. And in 4 years, we'd like to have 100 employees. And we believe, for reasons we might get into, that that's realistic.
Well, and I love what you guys are doing, and we've discussed my part of my hope with this podcast is that somebody in Augusta or in another city will be inspired by the success that you guys are having to help. It's what is obviously an underserved demographic in our community. I mean, in communities everywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things we've tried to do when people ask us what impact we hope to have, and I think we try to describe it in 3 ways. The most obvious one is the impact on our employees.
Yeah.
And, we can get into some wonderful stories of that. That's great for our employees, great for their families, et cetera. We have a big impact on our corporate clients who get to see and understand the talents of our neurodiverse employees, which will encourage them to not only work more with us, but to employ more individuals on their own. And third, we want to be an inspiration to other entrepreneurial efforts in either other business areas or other geographies to help provide meaningful opportunities for this population. Like, as you said, Deke, every city can use something like this.
Well, and that's for me. It is serving the least of these in a lot of situations, and we've got an example here in Augusta. We just had the groundbreaking for our first tiny home community for kids aging out of foster care. So that's basically here in Augusta, and I'm sure a lot of other places. That's not an underserved demographic. That's an unserved demographic. And you think about it, so in that situation, the average foster kid gets placed 20 times before they age out. So it's like, but if we can reach out and love on people and help them be productive, more productive citizens, and give them a sense of dignity, I think that's just so important in the world today.
Well, I think Jacob has done, I'll tee this up for Jacob, but I think he's done an exceptional job along with other members of our management team to instill that sense of dignity, confidence, and accomplishment. Mm-hmm. And maybe, Jacob, you have some either, comments on how you've done that or examples of that.
Sure. Yeah, one of the things we see often with our employees is we'll get a comment like the following. So I'll give one example, but it exemplifies a lot of typical conversations we'll have. So this was back in the very, very end of 2017. So as Chet mentioned, we launched Ventures ATL early 2017. So we had 2 employees at this point, and Chet and I were talking, this was late December, kind of year end, about how the year went, what do we want to do this next year, how can we improve, we got this good idea, how do we build, et cetera. And one of our employees was still around, had not yet left, and so we asked him, like, hey, what are your thoughts? Chet and I were just thinking about these concepts. We'd love your feedback, your thoughts. And this employee never gets emotional, like 0% emotional. And he left the room. And so Chet and I kept talking. I went to go check on him. And long story short, saw that he was really emotional. So I got concerned. And so I asked him, is everything okay? What's going on? And he said, I just realized when you asked me that question that this was the first time in my life that I ever felt that someone cared about me and valued my opinion. And went on and on and on. But I think the main takeaway there is that what we're giving our employees, in part at least, is the feeling of value, of dignity in some ways, and the feeling that what they do, who they are, the skills they have, all has matter and purpose. And it's incredibly invigorating to see because although our main focus as an organization is employment, we see a ton of spillover benefits in other aspects of their lives. That could be in relational, social aspects. It could be dating. It could be living on their own. It could be financial independence. But what we see time and time again is that with the energy that they're developing and the confidence they're developing from working at Ventures ATL, they're setting goals outside of work life. They're working towards those goals, and their lives are just blossoming. And so it's really, really rewarding to have a front row seat to see that every day.
Well, and I think I'd shared the first time we spoke that this podcast, in a way, is to me sort of counter programming to the mainstream media in general, and that there's so many good stories out there that I want to hear. When I first spoke to you guys, I was so glad that Bonnie connected us, but I'm like, I want to be inspired. It can be a little dark and scary world at times, but I also share with people, I'm like, look, 99.9% of people that live in America will have absolutely no impact on what goes on in Washington, D.C. But the world begins outside your front door. And so if we'd all, as communities, focus on the grassroots and the local level, trying to develop, the best communities we can, places where people are welcomed and valued and seen and heard, that's the best thing we can do. And that's what you guys, exactly what you're doing with Ventures ATL.
Yeah, we certainly have kind of an institutional bias toward action.
Yeah.
And so we know we have an issue, and we know that for a variety of reasons, this population has been underserved, and we're going to do something about it. And we're going to be a positive example and inspire even more. And it's really interesting when we look back and think of the companies we're now working with. We have, to some degree, a who's who of some big companies in Atlanta and beyond, and we've opened their eyes in some meaningful ways.
Well, and I'm sure that they, as you say, opening their eyes to see people just develop this sense of dignity, that our employees take pride in their work. I mean, that's got to make your major employers that you're working with up there in Atlanta feel great about what they're doing as well.
Oh, it does. It's interesting. In one case, a very large client who we had a very strong relationship for about 4 years, and about a year and a half ago, we assumed a role where we're managing data directly into one of their key systems. And I asked the principal sponsor at this client, after it got underway, I said, well, how's it going? And can you tell a difference between what your employees are doing? Because our employees are kind of working in parallel. And he said, yeah, I can. He said, your employees are more thorough and accurate. There's not much of a difference.
And in fact, that same client came to visit us a couple weeks ago, and they were speaking more on that point. And they said that the very communication and work that our employees were doing, the client was using as teaching material for new hires as well. So it's not only that they're doing thorough, but they're doing such an exceptional job that it qualified as what they wanted to use as teaching material for all of their new hires.
It's really kind of cool. I think when you mentioned that, these folks have special talents and see things differently, we really want to focus on some of the ways in which those differences are real strengths. So one of the things that's interesting is our employees tend to be very literal, really good rules followers, and great attention to detail. And so the discipline and focus we provide at the beginning on projects is something like, as Jacob said, the client said, well, we'd like to use this as a model. And, I know at one point we said, we will make a big deal on the clarity of instructions on the front end. And then later the client said, would it be okay if we adopted this clarity of instructions thing on other things in our business? And I said, yeah, knock yourself out. Good idea. It's actually pretty productive, but it's just an example of, while some people may think of this population as having a disability, in many respects, what we're talking about is simply a difference, which has some great values.
And I think that's the good Lord made all of us different. That's the beauty of the world for me. But I'll also say that. So I've always said that a big idea without an underlying business plan, successful, is basically a pipe dream. But what I love what you guys have done, I mean, you've made the case that this business model works, that it's successful.
Well, it's really important to us to do so. We recognize, Jacob made a great point earlier, that sometimes potential clients or people in the community are very well-intentioned, but have an idea for us that's well-intentioned, but it doesn't quite make sense from a business standpoint. And we're pretty diligent and rigorous about making sure that, listen, this is a great mission, but it's got to make sense. It's got to have legs. It's got to have underlying value to the companies that engage us. And if it does that, it'll be a real home run. And I think we've really strived to be true to that. And what's interesting is, in many ways, we may have a mission that appeals to people, but we're also a very entrepreneurial enterprise. That does, and maybe Jacob has some thoughts on that too, and
Sure.
some of the things that make us interesting in that respect.
Yeah, and I want to connect this point to something you said earlier, Deke, about the opening of the foster home initiative in Augusta. One thing that we would love to be is a solution for everyone, but we will be the first to tell you that we cannot be a solution for everyone. And the reason why is if we do so, we're going to broaden our aperture of our services way too much to be able to be efficient and effective. And so we need to focus on a specific area. We want that to be as broad as we can, but it still has to be somewhat specific. And I say that to say that, therefore, it needs a lot of hands. This problem of bridging this unemployment gap requires many different solutions. We won't be able to hire everyone through the Ventures ATL model. We'd like to hire as many as we can, but it inevitably will not be the millions that are out there that need employment. So we need other people to go. And so it's inspiration for other people. If you have an idea, go towards it. And there's a quick story I'll share that I think is applicable here. I was in a church service many years ago, and the pastor was talking about the the orphans issue across the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he shared this shocking statistic. It was a rather large congregation, but he said, if everyone in this congregation adopted one person, they would eliminate every single orphan in the entire United States. And what that goes to show is, to your point, of you just need someone to do something. If you have an idea, that's great, but that's a pipe dream unless you do something. And doing something actually isn't that hard. It doesn't take as much of an effort as you think it may be. So we're looking at this 80% unemployment gap. It seems so daunting, and it is quite large, but it can be addressed rather effectively if just a few people with good ideas actually roll up their sleeves and do it. And we're only one of those, and hopefully we inspire many more. But the inspiration here is that gap is not as large as it may seem, and that people that are caring about this issue, if you have an idea, bravo, and go chase after it, because we're not that far from bridging it as it may seem.
No, and I just feel like to a large degree today, there's a lot of hopelessness out there. I mean, there are a lot of people that are hopeless, and they've thrown their hands up, and I'm like, no. I'm going to show you my friends doing this amazing work in Atlanta and it seems like, that old adage, eat the elephant one bite at a time. But it seems like, 80% unemployment rate with people with autism, we're never going to be able to do anything about that. But let me ask you this, because oftentimes I've told people that if somebody doesn't tell you you're crazy for getting into something in the first place, you're probably not doing it right. And I did get that a lot when I first ran for mayor, among many, many other things in my life. But you're always going to have people that are going to tell you, when you start off something like this that's very entrepreneurial, something that's not the norm, I'm sure that there were plenty of people that told you it would never work.
Yeah, well, I think they did. And I think you make a really good point that you shouldn't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Jacob's probably heard this story more than he'd like, but I was a partner at a global consulting firm, and I was really honored when at one point I was appointed to a select group of 12 partners from around the world who were part of the Big Idea Committee. Then I found out a week later there was a separate committee called the Good Idea Committee, and I wasn't on that one. I was just on the Big Idea. But they really were trying to say, we want folks who will think outside the box, and then we'll figure out how to make it happen. So I actually, attempted humor notwithstanding, we had a little more factual grounding to believe this would work than we may have suggested. So a couple of things I want to say. Before we founded Ventures ATL, I mentioned I was on the board of an organization in the Midwest that employed adults with autism. I spent a lot of time helping that organization grow dramatically. I saw the attention to detail and focus and how it could be applied in particular to these data management activities on which we excel. Before we opened Ventures ATL, we spent 2 years flying around the country meeting with people who had tried similar initiatives. Some succeeded, some failed, all of them were willing to be very forthcoming about what worked, what they would do differently, what the best lessons were. And as you might expect, the best lessons frequently came from the failures.
Oh, yeah.
People were very kind in sharing that with us. So we benefited from it. We started out kind of standing on the shoulders of some other people, and we recognized that, and we're grateful for that.
Well, and to me, I've always said part of good leadership is making people feel safe, secure, and that their voices are heard. And so that's what you're providing for your employees. But also, I have a leadership guru friend out of Vancouver, Don Barron. But he said there's a difference between fitting in and belonging, right? So to fit in, you might have to compromise your character or fit in with the clique. But belonging means, people accept you warts and all. And that's, to me, I don't want to make people feel like they have to do anything that I'm working on. They have to fit in and change their character to be a part of the clique. I want to make them feel like they belong. So your employees that's a sense of belonging, I'm sure that they have, but they also have that sense when they're working for the major employers you're connecting them with.
And they have a lot of pride in being connected with those companies. We have pride in that as well. And I think, Jacob, maybe you can speak to that, how we've made them feel that they belong, while at the same time encouraging them to work on some areas that will help them succeed in working with our clients and otherwise. So maybe you have some thoughts on that.
One of the things so I, along with two of our other managers, Jordan and Gia, try to really focus on, I think Jordan and Gia especially do a great job of this, is articulating the why of what we're doing. So when we have a particular project, imagine we're this large Fortune 500 company and we're doing this data management project. It can be really easy to get lost in the specificities of that project and lose the view of what this actually means, why it's important, et cetera. And so what our management team tries to do, and Jordan and Gia do especially well, is articulating with our team before we get started, throughout the project, and then at the conclusion as well. Here's what we're doing here, how it applies to the specific stakeholder we're working with at that said client, and here's how that helps the client at large. And we found that when we've articulated that well, it invigorates the team, and they care so much about the work they're doing mattering, as we've mentioned before. And so being able to articulate that why, we found, is an especially meaningful part of any engagement. And one thing we've tried to do recently as well is we've started to have our clients come visit us, and this doesn't always work. We have clients across the country. We have many in the Atlanta area as well. And so for ones that are either visiting in town or are already in town, we'll have them come visit our office and meet with the team. And we found this to be incredibly popular with our team because they get to meet, get to shake hands, that face-to-face contact with the people that they're helping. And so we find that just is so compelling for them.
It's also compelling for our clients to meet with our employees. I don't want to understand
perhaps
that
more so,
part.
actually.
They come away saying, wow, this was so meaningful to me. I've been the recipient of the good work of your employees. I engage with them maybe on a weekly Zoom session or something, but meeting with them, seeing and sensing their enthusiasm is really kind of a profound experience for many of our clients.
Well, I've got a very strong faith. Y'all and I have discussed this, but I think, the good Lord intends for us to live in community. And so it basically, effectively, what you're doing too with your employees, and then when they go on to placements, you've created your own little community. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And you're not just creating it for yourselves, you're inviting people to come into your community, which that's important.
And for the population we employ, that's even more important than it may be for neurotypical people or other, the population in general. That special connection and feeling belonging, which maybe they haven't experienced to the same degree as other individuals. And even though, by the way, many of our employees are, not just out of school. We, in the last year and a half, I think we've hired 4 people in their 40s. We have people who have a variety of life experiences, but this represents a particularly meaningful one for them.
Well, as we sort of get down towards the end, because I could talk to you guys all day about this, because I love what you're doing. I love shining a light on people doing great things. going out there making a difference, but for the right reasons. You obviously have kindness and compassion and care for your employees, so big up on that. And you're successful at what you do. So as we get down towards the end, I always like to ask my guests 2 questions. And so it'll be 2 questions. You each get to answer them. Where can people find you? Where can people find Ventures ATL?
I'll take that one because I have a feeling the second one's tougher. So the first one is they can find us on our website, which is www.venturesatl.com. And just for further background, we're based in Atlanta, actually in Sandy Springs, which is the first city just north of the city of Atlanta. And there's a lot of very good information on our website in terms of for prospective clients or employees and for people who are just in the community and interested in what we're doing.
Well, next time I'm up that way, I want to stop by for a visit. But
We'd love to see that.
Okay, Jacob, you get the last question for the win. On a daily basis, what puts a smile on your face and brings joy to your heart?
Ooh, I'll tailor it specifically to Ventures. And while I'm thinking of the ad too, so in addition to our website, social media, so any platform at Ventures ATL. So people can get a more behind the scenes look at day-to-day of the employees. And then what brings a smile to my face? I have a lot of friends that are in a variety of different careers, and I try to talk to them quite frequently. And there's nothing wrong with this, but a common negative that I hear, a common kind of low in their day-to-day, week-to-week, is work is just not going well. It's not fun. Work sucks, so to speak. When I walk into the Ventures ATL office, I'm not going to go out and say 100% of the time, but I would say probably easily over 95% of the time, if you take all of our employees on aggregate, they are thrilled to come into the office. In fact, they, on average, strongly dislike holidays where the office is closed because that means they can't come into work. So I would, it's a pretty unique experience to find someone that's like, oh, shoot, there's July 4th or there's Thanksgiving. I can't come to work.
Are you sure that's a national holiday?
Can you not travel so you can come let us into work? And so, that's, silly in part, but also I think is really meaningful because what it conveys to me is that we have a team of people that have found something that enlightens their spirit, that they are compelled to do, that they feel on fire for. And being around that is simply contagious. Like, you can't help but put a smile on your face. You can't help but feel a little bit lighter with whatever weight you're carrying. You can't help but go out into the world and look at things through a different lens. And I think being around our employees, it really does that. And a quick clarifying point, all of our employees work in our office. So we're not a placement model. They don't work at our client site. They all work for us in our office. And so we're around them day to day. And you just come to visit our office as a management team, or if we have clients that come and visit, or just friends of the firm that come and visit. And I think they all share that. And they leave saying, hey, there's something different about this team. And it really changes how they see the world when they leave.
And that's in a world that could appear dark at times. I think people will go to the light and the good energy if you provide it for them. And so I know you gentlemen are providing that good energy and that light. And so God bless you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate what you're doing too.
Yeah, we really do.
We do hear a lot of negative on the news in general because negative sells. So the efforts that you make to give a platform to positive stories, there's not enough of it. So bravo to all the work that you and your team are doing, because it does make a difference. It is meaningful.
Well, I look forward to having you guys back on again soon, but that's all the time we got for now. Dropping the mic, and we are out. Hey, guys, thanks for listening to or watching the Changemaker podcast today. Greatly appreciate it. If you're listening and you want to see the video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Deke Copenhaver. That's pretty easy to remember, I would think. But really, we also want to remind you to like, subscribe, rate across all platforms, download. And if you're looking for a coach, a speaker, or anything, you know where to find me. Just email me at dekecopenhaver.com. And thanks so much for listening.